Good morning, class 7 students. How are you? Hope you all are taking good care of yourselves. Yes, you do need to. And at the same time, you are busy with studies. So, let me ask you before I begin with my history class. I had posted a preview of chapter 5. Hope you have gone through that. Rulers and buildings. Introducing the chapter to you, as we have completed the chapters Mughal period, rulers of Mughal period, or you say Delhi Sultanate. So now, so as to proclaim their victory, they were into construction. They used to make sure that buildings somehow what we say that when a dynasty came to power, kings wanted to emphasize their moral right to be rulers, and they began with constructing the places of worship. At the same time, also making sure that they are into construction of forts, palaces, minarets. Here we have two divisions, 8th to 18th century structures. One part says forts, palaces and tombs for grandiose of king, and temples, mosques, bazaars for common man. Yes, of course. Now during 8th to 18th centuries, kings and their officers built two kinds of structures. Now here it is being clarified. The first were forts, palaces, garden residences and tombs. And second type were structures meant for public activity. That is temples, mosques, tanks, wells, sarai and bazaars. Sarais were the places where the travelers used to take rest for a while. Now, in this clipping, Delhi snapshots, some monuments are shown, arch bridges, picture of arch bridges also there. Then we have garden. Most of the time, the monuments or these buildings used to have gardens around, and gardens also had reservoirs. Somewhat you can see here, water is there. It was believed that it would be helping in maintaining the area cool. Trees were planted around it. Tomb of Jahangir. Here also you can see the trees, garden area, then use of sandstone. Now it was very much clear, as we have historical evidences, that engineering skills had come from Greeks, wherein the Greeks were the first people to introduce concrete, and wherein Here, the monuments provide an insight into the technologies used for construction. Superstructure, which is an elaborate form of large room, making roofs by placing wooden beams or a slab of stone across four walls. This was very essential. Although construction activity was carried out by others, including merchants, they built temples, mosques, wells. However, if you talk about domestic architecture, large havelis or mansions of merchants, they've survived from 18th century. Talking about Indo-Islamic architecture, as you can see in this clipping, it's quite colorful. Intricate work is done. So as to describe Indo-Islamic architecture, main element in the Islamic architecture is introduction of arches and beams, and that is arcuate style of construction. Some of the most popular features of Indo-Islamic architecture include high domes with pillars around it, large open courtyards, and high minarets. Red sandstone was preferred material to build these structures. We have seen here the use of red sandstone, white marble. Now here two terms, that is arches and domes. Arches is arch-shaped structure. Domes, that is the top of that monument or a building, which is generally, if we describe it as inverted cup-shaped structure. Clear? Now, red sandstone, extensively used in construction of Red Fort. Now getting on to two styles of architecture. One was trabeate. So how do we define trabeate? Roofs, doors, windows were still made by placing a horizontal beam across two vertical columns, a style of architecture called trabeate or corbelled. Between the 8th and 13th centuries, the trabeate style was used in the construction of temples, mosques, tombs, and in buildings attached to large stepped wells or baulis. Stepped wells or baulis, they were water reservoirs. Now, main elements are the introduction of arches and beams, the arcuate style of construction, and traditional Indian building style is trabeate, that is using pillars and beams and lintels. Arcuate. It was an architectural form in which the weight of the superstructure above the doors and windows was sometimes carried by arches, that is part of buildings above ground level. Limestone and cement was increasingly used in construction. This was a very high quality cement which, when mixed with stone chips, hardened into concrete. And the use of concrete was there. They started mixing gravel with cement, and then when it settled, it used to be very strong and sturdy. Now here in this clipping it is shown the trabeated roof and arcuated roof. Trabeated roof, you can see that stone lintel is there on which the roof is resting. Stone pillar or stone post is also shown. Whereas in arcuated style, wedge-shaped blocks have been fixed in a shape of arch where the weight of the roof rests. Building temples, mosques, and tanks. Temples and mosques were beautifully constructed because they were the places of worship. They were meant to demonstrate the power, wealth, and devotion of the patron. An inscription mentions that Rajrajeshwara temple was built by King Rajarajdev for the worship of his god, Raja Rajeshwara. Now, as I said in the beginning, this started with temples. Temples were because they used to care for the public, but at the same time, they themselves, if they were worshippers of any deities, they wanted to raise a temple, construct a temple, and place the statue of the deity. Now, temple construction in the 11th century. The Rajarajeshwar temple at Thanjavur had the tallest shikhar amongst the temples of its time. Shikhara means the topmost part of the temple, the pinnacle. Then the Kandariya Mahadev temple dedicated to Shiva, Lord Shiva, was constructed in 999 by King Dhangadeva of the Chandela dynasty. Now, it had an ornamented gateway which led to an entrance and the main hall. That main hall was known as Mahamandap, where dances were performed. The image of the chief deity was kept in the main shrine. Main shrine was the Garbhagriha, the interior-most part. This was the place for ritual worship, where only king and his immediate family and priests gathered. Whereas, talking about Rajarajeshwara temple at Tanjavur, constructing it was not easy because there were no cranes in those days, and 90-ton stone for the top of the shikhar was too heavy to lift manually. So the architects built an inclined path to the top of the temple, placed the boulder on the rollers and rolled it all the way to the top. The path started more than 4 kilometers away so that it would not be too steep. And later on it was dismantled once the temple was constructed. So this is a temple which is much talked about. Rajarajeshwara temple, if you mention anywhere, you will look into it that this is precisely a Shiva temple which is located in Kannur district of Kerala, South India. And the temple is regarded as one of the existing 108 ancient Shiva temples of ancient Kerala. Now moving on. Building temples, mosques and tanks. Sultan Iltutmish won universal respect for constructing a large reservoir just outside Delhi, Kunha. It was called the Hauz-e-Sultani or the King's Reservoir. Sometimes these tanks and reservoirs were part of temple, mosque or Gurudwara. Muslim sultans did not claim to be incarnations of God, but Persian court chronicler described the sultan as the shadow of God. An inscription in the Quwwatul Islam Mosque explained that God chose Alauddin as king because he had the qualities of Moses and Solomon, the greatest lawgivers of the past. Now, since I have given the reference of Quwwatul Islam Mosque, it is very important that we get to know Quwwatul Islam Mosque. The clippings show the pillars of Quwwatul Islam Mosque. It was a 12th century mosque with a tomb of an imam. It exhibits a blend of Hindu and Islamic influences. When we talk about Indo-Islamic, yes, Indo-Islamic architecture. It is located in Qutub complex, celebrating Muslim conquest of India. And this was in fact the first mosque of all India. It is built of red sandstone, grey quartz, and white marble, but is probably inspired by the iron of pillar of law that itself stands on the site. Now the question arises, who built the Quwwatul Islam Mosque? Here the ruins of Quwwatul Islam Mosque are all shown here. It was commissioned by Qutbuddin Aibak, founder of Mamluk or slave dynasty, and built using the ruins of 27 Hindu and Jain temples. When we talk about Hindus and Muslims separately, we cannot separate them. From time immemorial, they have been one. Constructing places of worship provided rulers with the chance to proclaim their close relationship with God, especially important in an age of rapid political change. Rulers also tried to transform their capital cities into great cultural centers and brought fame to their rule and their realm. Yes, Muslim sultans and badshahs did not claim to be incarnations of God. When we talk about temples, they were the miniature of model of the world ruled by kings and his allies. Whereas, since it was Islam which was predominant at that point of time, henceforth, building of mosque, an idea of building Quwwatul Islam Mosque was quite relevant. Now, gardens, tombs, and forts. Babur, in his autobiography, described his planning and laying out formal gardens placed within rectangular walled enclosures and divided into 4 quarters by artificial channels. These gardens were called Cheharbagh or 4 gardens because of their symmetrical division into quarters. Few most beautiful gardens were constructed by Jahangir and Shah Jahan. Now, actually, in Kashmir, Shah Jahan built a very famous garden in Kashmir, Agra, and of course Delhi. It cannot be ruled out. And there were several important architectural innovations during Akbar's reign also. And when we talk about inspiration, Akbar's architects turned to tombs of his Central Asian ancestor. Now, India's first garden tomb. Here it is a clipping of India's first garden tomb. Now, this is an important term, that is Pietre Dura. What is Pietre Dura? As the term suggests, Pietre Dura is colored hard stones placed in depressions, carved into marble or stone, sandstones, creating beautiful ornate patterns, or inlays that are depicted by colored hard stones. Or, in a very simplified language, when we talk about it, we can say pictorial mosaic work using semi-precious stones. Typically, it was used for tabletops or other furnitures also. Pietre Dura is a term for using cut and fitted highly polished colored stones to create images. Here you can see that. And the stonework is glued stone by stone to a base after being sliced and cut in different shapes and sections and then assembled together. See, in the circular one. So precisely that the contact between each section was practically invisible. On white marble, fine marble, the pietra dura work has been done. Could you see it here? And here panel is also made. Short, see down below. Pietra dura work is done in this panel. Now, if you talk about who started Pietra dura, it was not started in India. Yes, of course. It is a Florentine invention of the end of 16th century. Yes. And it is a very decorative art, and you can see it in Taj Mahal. Beautiful work. Pietra dura work has been done in Taj Mahal. Now see here at Madhuddaulla's tomb. Inlay work done down below on the panel. White marble base, pasted inlays. It's clearly shown here. Now coming towards the architectural innovations. Several important architectural innovations during Akbar's reign. What were they? The central towering dome and the tall gateway, that is Pistak, became important aspects of Mughal architecture. First visible in Humayun's tomb. The tomb was placed in the center of a huge formal Cheharbagh and built in the tradition known as Eight Paradises or Hasht Bihisht. A central hall surrounded by 8 rooms. It was constructed with red sandstone edged with white marble. In fact, it was during Shah Jahan's reign that different elements of Mughal architecture were fused together in a grand harmonious synthesis. Now here Humayun's tomb is shown here, where red sandstone is also used, then marble is also there, then garden, surrounded by garden. I have not taken up this Cheharbagh Gardens because Cheharbagh Gardens I intend to elaborate this topic. The Cheharbagh Garden, many a times historians have termed as riverfront garden. Yes. Although dwellings were not located in the middle of the Cheharbagh. So now, bringing an end to this module and rest of the major topic, that is Cheharbagh Garden, its elements. Yes, riverfront gardens and the elements of riverfront garden I would be taking up in the next module. Your assignment: PowerPoint presentation, show the arcuate and trabeate style of architecture. Also write the differences between the two. Any doubts? You will simply pick the historical monuments wherein arcuate and trabeate style of architecture has been used. And at the same time, few of the 1 or 2 slides you would be writing the differences between the two. That's about all. So get going. Do the assignment. Enjoy doing the assignment. The chapter will be continued. It is to be continued. That's all for now. Stay happy. Stay safe. Bye-bye.